All right, here we go, friends. We are in part 5 of our Chasing After series. From the very beginning, we've talked about the goal behind the series and why we jumped into the book of Ecclesiastes. And if you've been reading along with us, you know how challenging this book is. It's challenging, not just like there's nuggets in there that really hit hard. It's just simply challenging to understand at times along the way. And we've tried to be really clear at why we jumped into this series as a church. And man, Ecclesiastes, it's amazing to me, is written so long ago, but how applicable it is to our lives today. And this is what our hope has been throughout this whole series, and it continues to be the same, is that each of us individually, we're going to ask these two questions that we've posed week after week. The questions are this: what am I chasing, and why am I chasing it? Everybody in here, we're chasing after something. Oftentimes, we don't even recognize that we're chasing something until we pause long enough to really evaluate life, till we kind of drill down on the things that we're doing and what fills up our calendar and what we write checks for and all of that stuff. Like, those are just kind of, they help us to understand, okay, so what is it exactly I'm chasing? And then why am I chasing it? If I'm chasing after something, there's a purpose behind why I'm chasing it. And our hope is that each of us individually, we're asking these questions of ourselves. Again, I'll say it, it's so easy to walk through a series like this or read a book like Ecclesiastes and have lots of people's faces and names pop into our mind, thinking to ourselves, man, I wish they could hear this. They really need it, right? Maybe some of you have already like passive aggressively sent the link to somebody and like, you should really give this a listen. My hope is that's not our mode of operation. Sure, if somebody pops in and like, hey, maybe take a look at this. But really, oftentimes when we're doing that, it's because we're failing to do the inner work for ourselves. Asking ourselves, what am I chasing? Why am I chasing after it? And this morning's message is titled, Means to an End. Originally, the title for this message when I built the overview was Hustle Culture, because we're all familiar with the hustle culture, right? Just trying to get after it, and it's on the grind and do everything that we can to get all the stuff, consume everything that we can. But through working through the passages that we're going to be talking about today, I switched it because there's a means to an end, and there's a reason why we're doing what we're doing, and what is the end game that we're aiming at? Like, what are we trying to accomplish when this is all said and done? As I processed today's message, it took me back to, I was 19 years old, and I'd just gotten a job in the aerospace industry. I know, it sounds pretty fancy, doesn't it? Aerospace industry. We were a subcontractor. It's called Protective Coatings. And we were a subcontractor for Boeing. And I thought, man, this is pretty awesome. In fact, I had finally gotten to a place. I mean, I was 19 years old, so I hadn't lived a ton of life. But I was dating this girl that I really liked her, and I wanted to put a ring on her finger. And I was finally at a job secure enough where I could do it, bought a ring, we got engaged and all that. I loved Protective Coatings. It provided an incredible atmosphere for me, and just in terms like a stability rather for me that allowed me to take the next step into life. But this is what I began to recognize as a young kid, 19 years old, is man, people spend a lot of time at work. See, Protective Coatings, their pay structure was set up to just feed the workaholic. This is the way the structure was set up. So you work 40 hours, regular time. Anything after 40 hours was OT, right? Overtime, you get into overtime. But here was the cherry on top, is everything after 48 hours was double time. You could double up your wage, and there was really no limits to it. You could work, I don't think it was legal, but people did it. Like, you could work as much as you wanted. And I remember seeing people in there is like, did you sleep under the table last night? Like, what in the world are you still doing here? And there were some guys and gals that I was working around in this environment. They were getting as much overtime, as many hours of overtime on a paycheck as they were getting regular time on a paycheck. So we're talking in the neighborhood of 40 hours of overtime and double time on a pay period. It was crazy to me. I thought, this is bonkers. But as a young guy, kind of curious, trying to figure things out, like, it didn't make any sense to me. I figured I had a lot better things to do than to paint airplane parts for my life. But I was curious, so I started to ask him, like, why are you here so much? It doesn't make sense to me. Help me understand what's going on. And the responses that I got from that question, like, why are you here so much, were both shocking and revealing. Here's some of the main answers that I got. Like, I got a house payment to pay for. Like, I got a mortgage to pay, and it requires me to work this much in order to make the mortgage payment. And I thought, oh man, that's got to be a steep mortgage payment. And then we're drowning in credit card debt. Like, if you saw the debt load that we carry as a family, like, you'd recognize why I've got to be here just to pay for all of the stuff that I thought I needed and couldn't wait for. So we put it on a card, and now all of a sudden they got all this debt and just kind of enslaved to this 40 hours of overtime a week. Just in case you want to do the math real fast, that's like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, roughly, how much they were working. Like, crazy, right? The one that really was ironic to me was, like, I bought a boat and now I've got to pay for it. And the irony in it is now can't use the boat. Why? Because they're working 40 hours of overtime a week. Like, there's no time to get inside of the boat and use the boat. Just completely ironic. The worst one of all, like the kicker, if you ask me, was if you met my spouse, then you would know why I spend all of my time here. Horrible, right? Like, man, like I said, it's shocking and revealing. What I recognize is these people weren't chasing their dreams. What they were doing was chasing the wind. And in chasing the wind, they were missing the life that they already had. Like the stuff that was right there available to them. They were overlooking it because they were chasing something down the road. It was very clear to me, even at 19 years old, that the tail was wagging the dog rather than the dog wagging the tail. Meaning their work and their money wasn't there to help support their life. Rather, they were giving their lives away for their money and their work. There's a problem. But after I had those conversations, there was a light bulb moment for me, even at 19 years old. And it required Heidi and I to sit down and have some deep conversations about what really mattered to us. And we made a determination early on in our marriage that if we couldn't support our lifestyle with me working 40 hours a week, then we needed to either downgrade our lifestyle or find a way to upgrade our pay. That was it. Just like we're going to live within our means. We're not going to let the tail wag the dog. We're going to stay focused on this. And like, if we can't get it done with my wage, 40 hours a week, then we have to change our lifestyle. Also in that conversation, we determined that we were committed to staying united together. Like, I could not believe this statement that if you met my spouse, you would know why I spend all of my time here. We were not going to let life pull us apart. And we were not going to succumb to the natural shift away from one another, because that's exactly what relationships do by nature. They move away from one another, and you have to intentionally stay committed to, united together as one. So young in my life, and then shortly thereafter in our marriage, this protective coatings job, it provided a steady pay, but it provided so much more for me because it helped me to get clear on what really mattered. See, I couldn't have put it into these words back then, but here's what I was learning, and this is what Ecclesiastes is trying to teach us as we work our way through it. It's this: wise living is seeing what you have, not chasing what you don't. Wise living is seeing what you have, not chasing what you don't. And we're going to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 9. And all of today's message is centered around this one passage. Now, this one passage is kind of a summary statement, if you will, for 3 chapters. So 4, 5, and 6. And here's my encouragement to you. Like, I didn't want to read all 3 chapters together. You're welcome. I figured you'd be asleep by the time we got done. As I wrestled through, I was like, man, I don't feel like I want to say that, and I want to say that, and I want to read this, and I want to read that. But then I honed in on chapter 6, verse 9, because I think it's a great summary for all three chapters. So here's my challenge to you. Here's your homework, is that today you go home and you read Ecclesiastes chapter 4, 5, and 6, because they are kind of a combination of thoughts. They're coming at it at different angles. But at the end of the day, I think verse 9 in chapter 6 says it best when it says this: enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless. It's like chasing after the wind. Now, generally, we teach from the New Living Translation here, but I love the way the ESV says it. It's a little bit more poetic, in fact. It says this: better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. The teacher in Ecclesiastes, what trying to help us understand is what you have in front of you right now, focus on that. You can daydream all you want about the things that you don't have. And when you spend all your time daydreaming about what you don't have, you lose what you have right in front of you right now. See, so much of life is wasted on wishing. It's just wasted on wishing. Wish I had this. I wish I had that. I wish I could go there. I wish I could do that. We spend so much of our time wishing we had the things that we don't currently have. And all the while, what we have is right in front of us. But so often, and this is what the teacher found in the Ecclesiastes, so often we can't enjoy what's right in front of us because we're too busy chasing the wind. We're too busy running after other things. And there's a couple of points that I want to make this morning in relation to these three chapters that help tell us why this matters. And the first one is this: chasing the wind crowds out contentment. Chasing the wind crowds out contentment. And we see this right out of the gate in chapter 4. It says this: most people are motivated to success because of the envy of their neighbors. Have you ever heard Keeping Up with the Joneses? Have you ever tried to keep up with the Joneses? I have. I totally have, right? I see what my neighbors have, and I want it's a little shinier, you know? Just a little nicer, it's a little newer, a little less miles. I'd love to have that thing. And envy tends to drive our successes. In fact, the teacher of Ecclesiastes, uber intelligent, tons of resources, spend his time to search these things out. And what does he say? This is the driver for most people when it comes to success. The reason why they're pursuing success is because of envy of neighbors. Now, here's the interesting thing about the way it's crafted in the Hebrew. It actually leaves room for sometimes our drive is because we want what our neighbors have. So we're envious of their things, and we're like, man, if I just work a little harder, I could have those things too. Or we work really hard because we want them to be envious of our things. It's not just an envy that I have for their stuff. We also are driven by this deep desire because we want them to be envious of our stuff. And you see how that thing never sorts itself out? Because if you're envious of their things, all of a sudden when you have their things or you have nicer things, then you have to work harder to make sure that they stay envious of your things. And that's why it's chasing after the wind. It's this never-ending cycle. We can never find satisfaction. Why? Because chasing after the wind crowds out contentment. When was the last time that you felt truly content with what you had? When you looked at the things around you and the stuff that's already in your hands and in your lap and said, man, I am very grateful for what I have. The old adage is true that comparison kills contentment every time. When I compare my life with others and the people around me, It kills the contentment that I should have inside of my soul. And this incessant drive for success out of envy of neighbors, it turns us into workaholics. Now, some people, they just throw up their hands and like, forget it, I don't want anything. I'm not going to worry about anything, and the yard's a mess and the house is a mess and all this idea is just around because I'm just going to be content. Well, the writer of Ecclesiastes was smart enough to know that some of us, that was the way we were going to go. We were going to move towards laziness. Like, just for the sake of not becoming a workaholic, I'm not going to work at all. That's a horrible plan. And that's why in verses 4-7, he really lays out, the teacher lays out for us this idea. It says like, the lazy person folds their hands and it leads to ruin. But then it says, but better have one handful with quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. You see, it's amazing. He takes these two equal and opposite errors, this laziness or this workaholic attitude, and he tries to help us understand that there's this middle ground that we should be pursuing. It's better to have one handful, meaning I have what I need to be content in this life, and quietness in the heart and in the soul, than to stir up workaholic, go like crazy, hustle culture, and I can finally have two hands full, but life is absolutely chaotic. Why? Because the teacher knows that chasing after the wind crowds out contentment. And we were created to be content human beings. So in this, what I would call juxtaposition, or in this contrasting of the lazy and the workaholic, it carves out this space for you and I. We can still be driven people. We just have to be driven for the right things. We can chase after, but what are we chasing after and why are we chasing it? Like, we got to get clear on that. So we can have a healthy drive and a healthy desire to succeed. That is okay. In fact, early on in my life, I came up with this statement, this saying, because I was wrestling with what does it mean to be content and also to be driven at the same time. And I don't know, try this on for you. Maybe it will be helpful for you. I came to this place where I was like, I always want to be content with who I am, but never complacent with where I am. I don't want to live a complacent life. I think that I have gifts that are meant to be honed and shaped, and oftentimes that leads to greater success. Like, I want that, but I never want to do that because I'm discontent with who I am. I don't want to do it because I'm envious of somebody else, or I want them envious of me. So this beautiful 3 verses in chapter 4 helps us to hold this in balance. I want to have one handful grateful and quiet in my spirit because I'm content with what God has provided me. It goes on to say in chapter 5, says, those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. In Ecclesiastes, it's a redundant book. If you've read through it, you recognize there's redundancy in it. And the redundancy is there to drive the point home. That's why a couple weeks ago we talked about, like, when Rockefeller was asked how much is enough, and he's like, just a little bit more. And that's what chapter 5 is saying. Like, if wealth is your end game, you will never have enough. Like, if you love money, you will never have enough. And what drives us to love money is because we think we're going to find some sort of meaning and happiness out of it, and it simply can never provide. That is a bankrupt plan. It can't provide. So it says that it's foolishness, it's meaningless. And I love how commentator Derek Kinder said it. He said this: if anything is worse than the addiction money brings, it's the emptiness that it leaves. Let that settle in. If there's anything worse than the addiction money brings, it's the emptiness that it leaves. And this is what I found time and time again. That those who are not content with their life, they're chasing after the wind, they miss today because they're trying to secure tomorrow. And the thing that gets the brunt end of that proposition is the people in our lives. Oftentimes, relationships are the first thing to go when we're pursuing success for the wrong reasons. I've seen it time and time and time again. In this pursuit of tomorrow, the relationships we have today are fractured and messy. We're not living in community. And I think that's the other thing that the teacher's trying to teach us in this passage. That chasing the wind crowds out community. Chasing the wind crowds out community. We were created for community. When God makes man and he breathes life into them, and he sets Adam to work in the garden, and he says, it is not good for man to be alone. So what does he do? He makes a helpmate for him. Why? Because we were created in the image and the likeness of God, who has eternally existed as three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which means God, one God, three persons, has eternally existed in relationship with one another. Perfect, unified relationship. So when he creates us, he creates humans. Part of our humanness is we were created to be in relationship with one another. And chasing after the wind crowds out community. It puts us in a position we were never meant to be in. And that's why in chapter 4, verses 7 through 12, the teacher recognizes that there are those who are going through this life all on their own. They don't have son, they don't have brother to share life with. And he recognizes the tragedy of the situation. In fact, he kind of breaks from his train of thought to help us understand how valuable relationship is. He's like, man, if you're all by yourself and you fall down, there's nobody there to pick you up. But if there's somebody with you, if there's another one along in the journey, they'll be there to pick you up and help you out. He goes as far as to say like 2 strands of a rope, hard to break, 3, impossible. And he was really leaning into this reality that you and I were created for community. And when we're chasing after the wrong things, it crowds out community in our lives. In fact, it goes on to say in chapter 6, talks about this man who might even have 100 children, but yet dies a lonely, miserable death, doesn't even have a proper burial. Why? Well, the implication is clear. Because this rich man spent his whole life driving for the future to the detriment of his family. And when it was all said and done and he passed away, his kids, there was 100 of them. You'd think 1 out of 100 would be a decent human, but nobody was there to even give him a proper burial. Why? Because chasing after the wind crowds out community. And the people who get hurt the most by that are the ones we love the most and who live the closest to us. And he said that this is an absolute tragedy. See, chasing after the wind turns people into pawns for progress, or they become obstacles in our pursuit for success. And that's never the way God designed human relationships to function. We are not pawns for each other's progress. And you are not an obstacle, or somebody's not an obstacle towards your success. We were created for community, to live together as one. And in fact, he goes as far as to say in the first part of chapter 5 that even God becomes a means to our end when we're chasing after the wind. Even God becomes a means to the end when we're chasing after the wind. You see, I wrestled with chapter 5, verses 1 through 7. I was like, this seems like such a diversion from the topic that we're on. Like, where did he go with this? Like, what's the point that he's trying to make? And this is what I think. I could be wrong about this, but this is what I think the point he's trying to make is that when God becomes a means to an end, we come into a place of worship like this in order for him to perform for us when we leave this place. Have you ever said this? If you have, no worries. Most of us have. God, if you do this for me, then I will do this for you for the rest of my life. Haven't we made deals with God, turn them into like a vending machine? If I put in the right coins and I push the right buttons, then I'll get the right product out in the end. And we make these promises to God that we can't keep. Why? Not because we want to have a relationship with God, not because we want to be deeply connected to him in community. It's because we use him as a means to an end. And the teacher says that that is a foolish way to live life. God is not a means to an end. He will not be a means to an end for us. And when we drop all of that off and we say, God, we just trust you for who you are. We want to be content with what you've given us. Now all of a sudden we can engage in a very intimate, personal relationship with him, not obstructed by the discontentment of our hearts, not obstructed by us chasing after the wind. I love this proverb. Don't know who wrote it. It's not in the Bible. I think it's an African proverb. This is what it says. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with someone. And if people are just simply pawns or obstacles in our pursuit of success, we will never be able to go far. We might go fast, but we won't go far. And my desire is to go far in this life. My desire is to get to the end, and when it's all said and done, to hear the words that the Apostle Paul heard. Well done, good and faithful servant. And in order for me to get to that point in the end, and same with you, it's going to require us to not let chasing the wind crowd out the community that we've been given. You see, Ecclesiastes 4-6 is trying to open our eyes to see what is actually in front of us. What is already there? Trying to help us not chase after the wind, not to get to the end of our lives and recognize what I was chasing was meaningless the whole time. See, wise living is seeing what you have, not chasing after what you don't have. And I want to finish by reading, this is the third time the teacher in Ecclesiastes has brought us back to these simple truths. And it's chapter 5, verses 15 through the end, through 20. We're going to close with this. He says, we all come to the end of our lives as naked and empty-handed as on the day we were born. You know that saying, he who dies with the most toys wins? No, they just die. Naked and empty-handed as they came. Goes on to say, we can't take our riches with us. And this, too, is a very serious problem. People leave this world no better off than they came. All their hard work is for nothing, like working for the wind. Throughout their lives, they live under a great cloud, frustrated and discouraged and angry, right? I just can't seem to get ahead. I can't seem to shake this desire because I'm envious of my neighbors or I want them envious of me. That's a very frustrating way to live. Even so, he says in verse 18, even so, I have noticed one thing at least that is good. It is good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work under the sun during the short life God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. And it is a good thing to receive wealth from God and the good health to enjoy your work and to accept your lot in life. This is indeed a gift from God. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life, not chasing the wind, rather enjoying life, that they take no time to brood over the past. That's the kind of life I want to live. Content with the stuff that's right in front of me. Opportunity to sit with people, enjoy a meal, enjoy a drink together, have good conversation, be grateful for the wealth that God has provided, but never let it become a God in my life. I have a couple of takeaways, and then we're going to dismiss out of this place. Number one is this, and really they're both underneath the same heading. Ask yourself. I think these are great takeaways. These are great next steps for us coming out of a message like this. So ask yourself, number one, what do I already have that I'm overlooking? What do I currently have that I'm overlooking, that I'm not seeing, I'm not recognizing as a gift from God? And number two, what can I say no to so I can say yes to what really matters? What is the tail that's trying to wag the dog in your life? What's the thing that you need to say no to in order to say yes to the most important things in your life? Would you stand to your feet this morning? I'm going to pray, and when I say amen, I just got a couple of quick things to talk about discovery, and then we'll be out of here. So Jesus, thank you so much for your word, the way that it teaches us, it corrects us, it rebukes us, it trains us. Help us to listen to the wise teacher from Ecclesiastes on these matters and not think that we're the anomaly and we can chase after the wind and end up having some sort of meaning in life. It's simply not true. So would you, through these couple of questions, point at the things in our life that we need to focus on and the things in our life that we need to let go of? We pray these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, discovery again.